3 spine-chilling cybercrime horror stories, sinister secrets revealed from haunted digital shadows. The storm was brewing, and the pristine suburban night was on the verge of exploding into chaos. Lightning crackled, illuminating Sarah's living room in fleeting flashes. She was hunched over her ancient laptop, fatigue weighing down her eyelids. Just another long night as a customer service representative, a normal life in a normal neighborhood. But then, the email popped up, its ominous subject line sending a jolt of adrenaline through her already frazzled nerves. Sinister secrets. Instinct screamed to delete it, but curiosity pulled her in. She clicked the link, and the screen fizzled to life with a warped, glitchy video. Strange voices echoed, sounding like they were beckoning her from the depths of hell. The air thickened, and Sarah leaned closer, her heart pounding. Suddenly, the lights flickered, a warning, or perhaps a sinister welcome. She could feel shadows creep closer, a palpable chill wrapping around her throat. What had she just unleashed? In the hallway, Ethan's door slammed shut. "Mom! Turn that off." His voice trembled, full of panic. He was trapped in his digital realm, oblivious to the impending horror. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer safe. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. The noises that slithered from the corners morphed from whispers to growls, awaiting their cue. Her phone buzzed. Another email? No, the security system was going haywire. Cameras whirred and swung, scanning their every move like ravenous eyes. A primal fear gripped Sarah. They were being watched, but by whom? She snatched the phone, desperate to call for help, only to find her pleas dismissed. "Are you feeling all right, ma'am?" The dispatcher sounded amused, as if her maternal instincts had turned her into a paranoid housewife in an overdramatic horror flick. Suddenly, a thought burrowed its way into her mind. Carla. The neighbor with the picture-perfect life and a side hustle as an influencer. Sarah had confided in her once, sharing the ups and downs of single motherhood. Now, that trust twisted into a nauseating knot. She knew Carla was into something strange, perhaps connected to the hollow world of online games that preyed on the unsuspecting. Had she turned their lives into entertainment for faceless viewers? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Panic surged as Sarah grabbed Ethan's hand. "We need to go now." The streets that once felt like home morphed into ghostly voids, empty and foreboding. Shadows flitted across the pavement, taunting them as they sprinted toward the old strip mall. The laughter of kids who once played there echoed hollowly in her ears, replaced by the deep, echoing silence of a threat she couldn't see. The world had turned against them. As they reached the abandoned storefront, an unsettling presence loomed. The hunted and the hunter had swapped places. Something there, lurking just beyond the glass, could make her heart stop. When a figure appeared, flickering in and out like a bad signal, dread coiled tightly in her stomach. Then Ethan's phone buzzed again, erupting with sound. A live stream was buzzing to life, both their faces projected on the screen, and the world was watching. How deep did this rabbit hole go? The question echoed in the dark, leaving Sarah breathless as she braced for the worst. A piercing shriek cut through the tense silence, echoing off the abandoned walls. Sarah spun around, gripping Ethan's hand tighter, her heart racing like a runaway train. The figure flickered again. Was it a person or just a trick of the light? Panic unfurled inside her, spreading like wildfire. Behind the veil of shadows, she imagined eyes watching, cold and unblinking. "Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't want to be in this, please." The live stream continued, their faces illuminated on the screens of countless unknowns. Comments flooded into view, each one a twisted confession or mocking laughter. "Look at them run." Read one. "Get scared, mommy," screeched another, a digital taunt. Sarah felt blood rush to her face. How could this be happening? A wave of shame washed over her as she realized how vulnerable they were, the world's entertainment. Stay close, she urged, dragging him toward the rear of the store where the darkened aisles loomed like giant teeth, waiting to devour them whole. Every footstep sounded like a thunderclap, reverberating through the hollow structure. They had to hide. The thought of what lurked in that blue-lit night haunted her even more than the threat of the shattered glass behind them. "Mom, my phone!" Ethan cried, yanking it out. "They're sending me messages." "What? What do they say?" Sarah's throat tightened. "We're watching, we want to play," he stammered, his face pale. Just then, a crash rang out, a sound like heavy breathing followed by a loud thud. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced back, sleep-deprived terror twisting into raw desperation. "Shush," she hissed, urging him to stay silent. She instinctively took a step into the shadows. The shelves loomed, packed with old toys and memories, soft edges blended into hard threats, lighting her path to encounter whatever devil had turned reality into a theater of dread. Ethan pulled at her sleeve, panic bubbling beneath the surface. "We have to go home." She held a finger to her lips, trying to calm him down as the lights above flickered dangerously. "If we leave, we're walking into their hands. We need a plan." Footsteps echoed from the entrance, slow and deliberate. Sarah squeezed Ethan's hand tighter. Darkness concealed them, but it felt more like a trap now. The sense of being hunted wrapped around them, tightening like a snake. Was it the same figure from before? Or was it something worse? "Help me, Ethan. Can you find a place to connect to the Wi-Fi?" He raised his head, the uncertainty flashing in his wide eyes. "Maybe, but just do it." The urgency pushed her voice sharper. She knelt down to meet his fearful gaze. "I promise I won't let anything happen to you. Please." Ethan's resolve seemed to flicker uncertainly. The footsteps grew louder, relentless. She could feel something edging closer. It wasn't just digital but flesh and bone. Sarah pulled him back, forcing the air from her lungs to calm her trembling heart. If they could just outsmart whatever terror had taken root in this nightmare. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. Ethan's face lit up, a sickening glow in the near dark. "They're streaming again and they can see us." Black terror gripped her as she backed away into the shadows, and in that moment, she heard it, an unmistakable whisper. "We're not alone." In a heartbeat, twisted faces melted from the dark, and with them came the sinister laughter of viewers who thrived on fear. Sarah's mind raced, but one thing was clear: escaping was only the beginning. And as the shadows swirled tighter around them, she realized the true horror was just about to begin. What were they watching? No, what were they waiting for? With each pulse of the screen, the boundary between their horror and the living nightmare dissolved. Would she be willing to sacrifice everything to escape? Ethan clutched her tightly, and for the first time, Sarah felt utterly helpless. The walls were closing in, and the digital nightmare was morphing into something far worse than she could have ever imagined. Dread hung thick in the air like a heavy fog, clinging to every corner of the store. Sarah's breath quickened, the sound of it filling the silence that pressed down on them. Shadows twisted at the edges of her vision, and she felt the weight of unseen eyes, their stares boring into her skin. Ethan's phone buzzed again, illuminating his face with an eerie glow. "Mom. They're sending more." His voice pitched higher, a strangled cry that made her heart lurch. "What does it say?" She strained to keep her voice steady, but fear slithered into her tone. "We see you, we hear everything." His eyes widened, frantic with terror. They were no longer just spectators, they were linked to something much darker than she imagined. "Shh," Sarah whispered again, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. They needed to find a spot to hide, to gather their thoughts, but each passing moment felt like a countdown. The footsteps had stopped. Then came a babble of distorted voices from the phone. "Look over your shoulder, Sarah, we're just a step behind." Cold chills crawled over her skin. They knew her name. How? The digital veil was no shield, it was a snare. Something about the very air felt charged, electric with malice. She tore her eyes from the glow of the screen. "Ethan, we need to shut it off. Now." "No." It's our only chance. He pulled it away, and her heart sank as she saw another notification flash across the screen. They're all together now, watching, waiting. Each comment streamed like a wicked tide, taunting suggestions of every fear she had ever known. Just let them come, Mommy, some sick soul had typed. The more she scanned, the more bile rose in her throat. It was like reading a script written by a monster. The footfalls again, closer this time, echoing softly, methodical, intentional. The dim light around them shifted, flickering as though it were alive, feeding off their fear. One corner of Sarah's mind wondered who was behind it all. Were they just as monstrous, or was there something deeper at work? Mom. Please. Ethan tugged at her sleeve. We can't stay here. No arguing. The words came out sharper than intended, but she was just as frightened as he was. We can't be seen. We need to move to find an exit. A dark figure loomed near the entrance, shrouded in shadow. Sarah froze, every instinct screaming to retreat. The figure shifted, an amorphous silhouette, and her stomach dropped. It didn't look human, not completely. There was something wrong, too elongated, too silent. Sensing movement, it turned slightly. The glint of something sharp caught the light, and dread wrapped around Sarah's throat, choking her breath. Stay low, Ethan. She pulled him to the ground, pressing their bodies against the cold floor littered with discarded toys and fallen shelves. The store felt alive, the walls watching, ready to swallow them whole. Whispers slithered around them. Join the game, Sarah, your son plays so well, Mom. His hand trembled in hers. What do we do? The air thickened with anticipation, almost mocking her as she struggled to think. They needed a plan, but it felt like the world was closing in. The creature drew closer, every click of its steps echoed in tandem with her racing heart. Time felt suspended, like a lingering note stretched too far. Then Ethan's phone lit up once more, the notifications unrelenting. It's over, no escape. One last comment flashed across the screen from an anonymous user. You're in our world now. In that moment, Sarah realized the shadows had begun to merge with them, intertwining with the fabric of her fear. She felt the ground beneath her shifting, alive with dark potential, and then, just as the figure crested the aisle, ready to reveal its truth, everything went dark. A single haunting phrase hung in the heavy silence. Let the play begin. What horror lay beyond the darkness? Would they even survive long enough to find out? Sarah's heart raced as the darkness swallowed them whole. The world around her faded into an oppressive void, and she felt Ethan's grip tightening around her fingers. Each breath seemed to draw in fear, filling her lungs with dread as her mind clawed at desperate thoughts of escape. Stay close, she whispered, the words barely audible above the pounding of her heart. That flicker of hope within her felt naive, almost childish, as the malevolence of the unknown curled around her like smoke. The silence clawed at her sanity, punctuated by the haunting echoes of the footsteps that had drawn near before the lights had gone out. The stillness felt unnatural, like the tense pause before a storm. Everything held its breath. It was as if the store itself was a predator, lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. Suddenly, a low hum vibrated through the floor, a resonance that seemed to penetrate her very bones. The whispers came again, disembodied and intimate, echoing all around them. You can't hide, Sarah. We'll always find you. A chill cascaded down her spine. Ethan. She hissed, panic threading through her voice. Can you see anything? No, it's too dark. His voice cracked, and she hated that he had to suffer this. She wanted to shield him from it all, but how? She released his hand briefly and fumbled on the ground for something, anything that might help. Her fingers grazed against a smooth object. It was a toy, likely discarded hours before. I found a flashlight. She exclaimed, hope flaring momentarily in her chest. Quick. Turn it on. Ethan's voice trembled in the darkness, but even his urgency couldn't completely mask the fear, heart eclipsing with dread. She flicked the switch. A thin beam cut through the blackness, casting their surroundings into a cold, harsh light. The store lay shattered and desolate, a graveyard of shelves and broken dreams. But something was hiding in the shadows. No. Over there. Ethan pointed, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Emerging from behind a snack display, the creature that had stalked them in the dark was more grotesque than she had imagined. Its elongated limbs, sinuous and twitching, seemed to bend at unnatural angles. Eyes glistened like shards of glass, reflecting the beam of light with a chilling intelligence. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of jagged teeth, impossibly wide, as though it thrived on fear. "Sarah, it's coming!" Ethan's cry pulled her attention back, the horror pushing against her sanity. Reflexively, she grabbed Ethan's hand again. "We need to move, right now." Rushing toward the back of the store, they stumbled over debris strewn across the floor like remnants of panic. The creature reacted, screeching, its voice a jagged symphony of malice and mockery. "Where are you going, little ones? The game has just begun." The hairs on her arms bristled as the shadows appeared to thicken around them, reaching out like tendrils trying to grasp for them, to pull them back into the darkness. "Mom, the exit!" Ethan shouted, pointing to the far wall where an emergency exit glowed faintly, as though beckoning them toward a glimmer of salvation. With every ounce of strength, they sprinted, the echo of their pounding hearts mingling with the creature's enraged screeches behind them. The cold air rushed against her face, but the door felt agonizingly far away. As Sarah's fingers grasped the handle, a loud crash resounded, the shelves behind them collapsing under the force of the creature's wrath. "Hold on, Ethan." With one final push, she flung the door open, a burst of blaring alarms clashing against the suffocating darkness. But as they stepped out into the blinding light, they suddenly found themselves not in safety, but in a new world, a faceless crowd of streaming figures connected by glowing screens, all staring, waiting, their faces expressionless and vacant. "Welcome to the broader game," they seemed to whisper together, echoes surrounding her as she felt the ground shift beneath her. What had she unleashed? What more awaited them in this new nightmare? The crowd around them buzzed with a disconcerting rhythm, the flickering lights of their screens casting an eerie glow on faces that were nothing but husks. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, a drumbeat of panic echoing in her ears as she turned to Ethan. "What is this place?" "I don't know," he stammered, his eyes wide with terror. "But we can't stay here." The figures moved mechanically, processing data only they could see. Their lips barely moved as they whispered in unison, an orchestra of half-formed thoughts. "Find the truth, uncover the lies." As Sarah stepped back, the throng parted slightly, revealing a wide avenue lined with glowing billboards, advertising nightmares instead of products. The oppressive atmosphere felt as though it was pressing down on her, each breath more shallow than the last. "Do you think they're alive?" Ethan murmured, scanning the bizarre sights around them. The penetrating sound of murmurs matched the pounding of her heart, mingling into a surreal symphony of dread. "Let us get out of here," she urged, clutching Ethan's hand tighter. They slipped past the crowd, weaving between the soulless beings who absorbed their surroundings through glimmering screens. Sarah felt their eyes upon her, although she dared not look back. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Anywhere but here," she responded, but uncertainty gnawed at her. The creature wasn't too far behind. The oily shadows creeping in from the edges of her vision felt impossibly close. A sudden crash snapped through the air, sending a jolt up her spine. One of the figures stumbled, dropping its device. The screen shattered, releasing a chaotic swirl of bright colors and disjointed voices, all screaming. The crowd went silent, turning their gaze toward the fallen figure as if its misstep had fractured a spell. "What is happening?" Ethan's voice quaked, gripped by fear. "That." Sarah pointed at the figure, or whatever remained of it. The vacant expression morphed into a grotesque representation of humanity, its body contorting unnaturally, lingering between the physical and something far more sinister. "We have to move." As they dashed further into the throng, she could hear whispers winding through the crowd, wrapping around her like tangible tendrils. "You can't escape this," is your reality. Fear spiraled, clawing at her throat. Sarah fought against the growing desperation. "We have to find a way out. There has to be a door, a window, anything." But instead of liberation, she saw a towering archway at the end of the street. Light trickled from beyond it, an ethereal glow that seemed to beckon her. "There." She yelled, and with urgency, they charged toward the exit, the thrumming voices intensified as they galloped, shadows creeping closer with each frantic step. "Come back, join us, we are waiting." The archway drew nearer as the crowd began to part. The space beyond rippled like water, alive and enticing. Sarah's hope ignited, even as terror unfurled in her chest. Ethan stumbled, nearly falling as they approached the threshold, but she pulled him just in time. "We can make it. Just a little further." The moment they reached the archway, a chilling wind swept through, feeling almost like a hand brushing against her neck. She turned just as the shadow lunged, a shrill scream tearing through the air, its jagged teeth snapping close. With one last breath, they leaped through, the world around them folding in on itself like paper. Then they landed, not on solid ground but in a swirling abyss of nothingness, a void filled with distorted reflections of their pasts, twisting memories beckoning them closer. "Sarah, what have we done?" Ethan's voice trembled, echoing in the emptiness around them. The whispers intensified, melding into thunderous roars. "Nothing can save you, you've only just begun." What would they face in this new nightmare? The abyss swirled, and somehow, Sarah knew it was only the beginning. The void pulsated, an insatiable chasm of fear stretching out before them. Dim shadows danced, flickering like dying fireflies, bringing with them ghostly echoes of their past selves. Their last memories flashed through the chaos, good times twisted into torment, laughter resonating before it morphed into screams. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. "Ethan," she whispered, terror pinching her voice, "we need to find a way out." He nodded, but his gaze was fixed on the shadows, drawn in, like moths seduced by a flame. "Sarah, I can hear them." The voices grew louder, now recognizable. Friends, family, even foes entwined in a cacophony of despair. Each syllable warped, wrung out of shape by sorrow and regret. "You abandoned me, you chose this path, you'll regret it, stop it." Sarah shouted, wrapping her arms around her head as if to drown out the accusations. A knot formed in her stomach, weighing her down, pulling her deeper into the abyss. "We can't listen to them." Ethan jerked as if struck, shaking his head violently. "No, they're right. We know." She screamed, clutching his arm tightly. "Look. We need to focus on getting out." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shimmered, colors swirling into shapes. A doorway materialized, pulsating with an inviting glow. Was it a trick? Could they trust it? Their instincts screamed at them to run, but the light felt like warmth in a cold world. Caution lost its grip, and they blinked toward it, drawn by the faint hope of escape. "We have to try," Sarah urged, her voice steadier now. As they rushed towards the doorway, shadows clawed at their heels, screeching their names, each wail digging into their skin like ice. "Join us, don't leave us." Heart pounding, Sarah managed to reach the door first, her hand trembling as she grabbed the handle, turning it with all her might. But the door refused to yield. She pulled back, as if repelled by a magnetic force, and glanced at Ethan, fear reflected in his eyes. "Ethan, help me." They pushed together, a frantic effort against the force pulling them back into the swirling darkness. The whispers morphed into screams, rising to a climactic pitch that threatened to split her head open. "You'll never be free. You belong to us." In one last effort, fueled by desperation, they flung their bodies against the door, and it burst open with a brilliant flash. They were hurled into a blinding light, colors exploding like fireworks, a whirlwind of sensation pulling them along. In an instant, they found themselves lying on a floor, gasping for breath, back in the familiar, yet horrid reality of their world, or so they thought. As they gathered themselves, Sarah glanced around. They were in a large, clinical room, sterile and cold. Monitors lined the walls, each flickering ominously. They flicked on one by one, revealing grainy footage of their past encounters, their lives viewed through an unblinking eye. "No, it can't be," she gasped. Ethan froze, his face turning ashen. "What is this place?" The monitors flickered again, and a familiar voice seeped through the static, dripping with malice. "Welcome back, Sarah and Ethan. You thought you escaped, but this is merely the beginning." Terror twisted in Sarah's gut, and she turned to Ethan, panic bursting in her chest. "What do we do now?" They were trapped again, but this time, in a web far more intricate. Outside, a storm of unspeakable chaos began to brew, their fate tied to threads of their own making. The voice echoed again, "Things will never be the same. What horrors would this new reality unveil?" As their surroundings darkened, a shadow slithered across the floor towards them, its purpose clear. The shadow inched closer, thick and dark, a palpable force that seemed to breathe in the harsh lights of the clinical room. Sarah shivered, pressing herself against the wall, a futile barrier between her and the encroaching dread. Ethan remained rooted next to her, his eyes wide, full of horror as it slithered, taking form. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with fear. The entity paused, its featureless face tilting as if intrigued. "I am what you feared most," it hissed, voice scratchy like a dying battery. "I am the mistakes you've buried, the secrets you've ignored." Before she could respond, the monitors blared to life again. Strident images of their lives flickered like a warped projector. Parties turned to screams, laughter falling into chaos, and every moment they wished to erase, filling the sterile room with an unbearable weight of memory. "No, this can't be happening." Ethan gasped, covering his eyes as if to shield himself from the truth. "Look closer," the shadow urged, its voice echoing seeping menace. "Every choice led you here. Where you're weak, I thrive." It gestured toward the nearest monitor. The screen shifted, revealing a recent memory, their triumphant moments in life, now distorted. Friends they thought they'd left behind whispered curses, their faces twisted with rage. They pointed accusing fingers, rendering Ethan and Sarah helpless, burdened by guilt. "Just leave us alone," Ethan cried, stepping forward defiantly. The shadow laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, resonating through the cold room. "You think you can escape what lies in your own hearts?" it taunted. "You carry your fears like anchors. The more you fight, the heavier they become. You've chosen this path." An explosive crack reverberated off the walls as the monitors flickered, the intensity of the dark's power swelling. Fear dripped like sweat, pooling beneath their feet in the chilling reality. The walls constricted, air grew stale and suffocating. Ethan's voice cracked as he caught her gaze, desperation threading through his eyes. "We have to remember who we are. This is not us." But was it? Could they even be sure? The shadows were whispering truths they didn't want to face, betrayals, fears, guilt mingling into a grotesque tapestry of despair. Every tear, every regret, every missed opportunity grows deeper the longer you linger here, the shadow urged, gliding closer, brushing Ethan's arm, cold as ice. He flinched, recoiling as its touch sent shivers racing down his spine. "No!" Sarah shouted, freeing herself from doubt's grip. "We can't let it define us." Determined, she grabbed Ethan's hand, reminding him of their shared resolve. "We have to fight." Ethan nodded, grounding himself in her words. They needed to confront this thing, face the riptide of their past. "What do you want from us?" he demanded. The shadow paused, a sneer forming in its darkness. "What I want," it purred, "is to see how far you'll sink into despair. It's a game, really." It swirled, flickering like a dying flame, and you're both the players. As it vanished into shadowy wisps, the monitors exploded with blinding light, erupting their shared voices, cries filled with anguish and joy, a cacophony echoing their struggle. The brightness engulfed them. Sarah shielded her eyes, her other senses heightening. She could feel a constrictive weight in the air, a pulse driven by their fear, the energy wrapping tighter. "What is happening?" Ethan gasped. "Trust yourself," Sarah shouted over the surge. "Remember who we are." She squeezed his hand tighter as the light darkened, and they were cast into an echoing void, swallowed whole by a force they couldn't comprehend. Just before they vanished, a whisper brushed against them, chilling as death. "You can't hide from your own shadows." As the echoes of their past faded into an ominous quiet, where would it lead them next? What awaited them in the spaces between their shattered memories? The dark had only just begun to show its true colors. Darkness enveloped them, a weight so thick it felt alive. An oppressive silence swallowed every sound, every breath they took, as if the void itself was listening. Sarah gripped Ethan's hand tighter, her heart racing, pounding against her chest like a hammer. "Where are we?" Ethan whispered, his voice trembling, filling the void with an unwelcome echo that seemed to linger longer than it should. "Somewhere between what was and what could be," Sarah murmured, feeling the edges of reality blur into something more sinister. The air crackled around them, a tangible pulse vibrating against their skin, dragging their memories back into focus. Faint whispers crawled around the edges of their minds, half-formed sentences weaving in and out of understanding. The past clawed at their ankles, an insistent reminder of failures and fears that had haunted them for years. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, morphing into disjointed phrases that pounded against their sanity. "You buried us," buried the truth. A singular figure took shape in the darkness, shifting like smoke-black tendrils weaving into a form barely remembered. Familiar yet horrifying. It was a distorted version of Sarah, or was it? Its eyes were vacant, mirrors reflecting guilt and despair. "Run," the shadow Sarah hissed, voice echoing unervingly against their souls. "You can't escape. What do we do?" Ethan gasped, anxiety cracking his voice. "Face it," Sarah yelled, her voice igniting a surge of courage. "It's just a reflection. A lie we've let control us." She took a step forward, and the shadow recoiled, as if her defiance struck it. A gnawing sensation wormed its way into Sarah's guts. "What if we can't?" she thought, dread twisting inside her, an echo of the shadow's taunts retching at her confidence. "Face it," Ethan shouted, stepping up beside her, determination igniting his eyes. "We have to remember how strong we are. The choices we've made don't define us, they made us." As they stood together, the shadows throbbed around them, flickering like a dying light. With a sudden jolt, the darkness pushed back, forcing them to stagger, but with each step back, their resolve only deepened. "We're not your toys," Sarah screamed, her voice slicing through the oppressive silence. "You're our fear, our shame, but you can't own us." The entity shrieked, an ear-splitting sound that reverberated through the void. The shape began to shudder, fissuring like glass, and in that moment, Sarah and Ethan glimpsed their true selves reflected within a version free from regret, alive with possibility. But the dark was seething. "You can't know what you've left behind," it howled, distortions shifting into faces they recognized: friends, family, moments of trust twisted into betrayal. "I see you," Sarah cried, confronting each guilt-ridden face. "You don't own me. You don't define who I am." Light splashed through the void, blinding them momentarily as the faces wavered. They could sense the shadow shrinking, clawing desperately to cling to the depth of their doubts. Then, panic erupted, wrapping cold fingers around their throats as the light flickered like a dying ember. For a brief moment, it felt like they had won, but as shadows thickened around them, a blaring alarm echoed from somewhere deep within. "Do you think it's over?" a voice hissed. The game is far from finished. As their surroundings began to spiral into obscurity once again, Sarah scrambled for Ethan, desperation cutting through her frantic thoughts. "We have to find a way out." But before they could respond, the shadows erupted again, racing toward them, hungry and relentless. The sensation of being crushed beneath an avalanche of darkness snuffed out their light. And in that moment before the darkness consumed them entirely, they realized they were not alone. "What is that?" Ethan gasped, eyes widening, as forms began to emerge from the shadows, faces twisted in rage and despair, their own screams mingling with the chaos. There was something lurking just out of reach, a thread between the shadows that promised answers or doom. What awaited them in the gloom? Would they unravel the truth or become lost to the darkness forever? The shadows surged like waves crashing against a cliff, swallowing Sarah and Ethan whole. Desperation clawed at their throats as they stumbled backward, but the darkness closed in, wrapping around them with a sickening embrace. Lurking in the depths were the figures, flickering like faulty screens, their harsh whispers merging into one haunting chorus. They called out their names, their tones a sickly sweet poison. "Sarah. Ethan, do you remember?" The weight of their memories pressed down harder, and the world around them twisted, pulling them apart. Faces flashed, friends lost, choices unmade, paths not taken, each one a knife lacerating their souls. Sarah's heart raced, echoing in tandem with the chaos around her. "Stay together," Ethan shouted, fear bright in his eyes. But the grip of despair was suffocating. "Look closer," a voice beckoned, different from the others. It was softer, seductive. With a shuddering breath, Sarah turned to find the source. Beneath the shifting veil of darkness was the silhouette of a woman, her features obscured but her presence electric. "Who are you?" Sarah breathed, stepping towards the figure, drawn like a moth to a flame. "I am the memories you've buried deep," the voice coiled around them like smoke, leaving an unpleasant taste in the air. "I am the truth you're afraid to face." Ethan moved to pull Sarah back, but she held her ground, captivated. "What truth?" As if answering her unspoken question, the shadows erupted, casting a stark vision before them. It was their hometown, but distorted, a nightmarish reflection steeped in malice. Abandoned buildings loomed overhead, windows shattered like broken promises. A clock tower stood tall, yet its hands spun chaotically, uncaring of time. "Your choices brought you here," the woman murmured, crystal clear now, her eyes shining with anguished knowledge. "Every lie, every betrayal, they live here now, feeding the darkness." "Enough," Ethan boomed, his voice echoing against the ominous cocoon. "We can't be held back by this. It's not real." But Sarah's resolve crumbled. "Maybe it is." She stepped forward, and with every breath, more figures emerged, cousins, friends, faces twisted in rage and sorrow. "We didn't mean to let you down, to forget, yes?" The figure called back, her voice rising, echoing through the shadows. "You can feel it. The weight of what you'd rather forget." With every admission, flashes of their past ignited like distant fireworks, but instead of joy, they were laced with fear and regret. Sarah's hands tightened around Ethan's, her pulse racing like a trapped animal. "I don't want to remember." The dark figure laughed, a sound that fractured the stillness. "Until you confront the truth, you'll only slip deeper into this void." Ethan turned to Sarah, fear cutting through the haze. "We have to break free. Together, we can challenge this." Before they could act, the ground shuddered beneath them, the shadows roiling like boiling tar. The figures screamed, merging and splitting, pleading for their attention. The cacophony drowned out reason, each face a reminder of their failures, each voice a reminder of their guilt. "Let us out," they cried, hands reaching out from the abyss. "Face us, face yourselves," panic surged through Sarah. What if they're right? Thoughts exploded like fireworks. Could they find redemption here? Or would they sink forever into this torment? "We can't let this control us," Ethan shouted. "We just need to fight." "Fight what?" A voice echoed back, chilling them straight to their cores. "The truth or the lie?" Just as the chaos surged again, a blinding light flickered at the edge of the darkness, illuminating a narrow path. Sarah and Ethan shared one last, fleeting glance before the shadows clawed at them once more. "Stay together," he roared, darting toward the light, gripping her hand tightly. But as they reached for it, the shadows gripped their ankles like a hungry beast, dragging them back into the dark. "What's happening?" Sarah gasped, her heart racing as Ethan struggled against the pull. "Don't let go," Ethan yelled, his face twisted in frustration and fear. The light flickered again, showing a glimpse of those they lost, their friends who had walked away, memories that dashed away into nothingness, but before they could move, the darkness spoke again, a low growl vibrating beneath their feet. "You're not done yet, so let us play again." The words felt like an electric shock, and with that, the dark melted away into a deeper void, pulling Sarah and Ethan farther into despair. A single question echoed in the silence: would they uncover the secrets of their past, or would they be devoured whole once more by the very shadows they refused to escape? Light burst forth, blinding in its intensity, pulling Sarah and Ethan into a whirlwind of colors and sensations. They found themselves back in their chaotic living room, the familiar walls standing around them like sentinels. The storm outside still raged, thunder booming in a grim reminder of what they had just faced. The buzzing of their phones still echoed around them, a cruel reminder of their digital entanglement. Breathless, they stumbled to their feet, hearts racing with the recent memory of the abyss that threatened to consume them. The air was heavy with the tension of their shared trauma, a reality that felt all too real. "Mom, what just happened?" Ethan's voice trembled, sounding both like a child and an old soul, burdened by a weight beyond his years. Sarah ran her fingers through her hair, trying to make sense of the chaos that had surrounded them. "I don't know, honey. But, we survived." The living room felt different now. Shadows licked at the corners, still clinging on, but with determination. She walked to the window and drew the curtains wide open, letting the electric lightning pierce through the darkness. "Look, Ethan. We're here. We're safe." But Ethan's eyes remained clouded with fear. "What if it comes back?" "We have to face it, whatever it is," Sarah replied, steeling her spine as thoughts raced in her head. "We have to keep our strength." She could still hear the whispers, feel the digging claws of guilt they had barely escaped from. The battle wasn't over, not yet. "I don't want to do this again," he whispered, the tremor returning. "I know," she knelt beside him, their eyes locking. "But remember what we said, our fears don't define us." As if on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed again, interrupting the silence. A notification blinked on the screen. "You're live." They both froze. The dread of the digital audience returned, the very specters they had tried to outrun now surfacing in their reality. "We're still being watched," Sarah's voice faltered. Ethan swallowed hard. "We can turn it off. We can disconnect." In that moment, realization ignited within Sarah. The power to cut the connections rested with them. With trembling fingers, she grabbed her phone. No more running. Let us take back control. She turned the camera toward them, focusing on Ethan's frightened face. "Listen," she spoke firmly into the lens, "if you're watching, we know you're out there. And we won't be your entertainment anymore." Every face that flashed through her mind coalesced into strength. Friends they had lost, moments of laughter that had now turned haunting, but they couldn't be the shadows anymore. They had fought through the depths of horror, and facing their audience was their final stand. With one decisive push, she hit end stream. The screen dimmed before her, silence settling heavily in the room. "It's over," Ethan said softly, a glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes, the shadows around them feeling lighter. Sarah turned to him, pulling him close. "Yes. We control our narrative. Let us live our lives without fear. No more games, no more darkness." And the storm outside began to fade, the wind's howling became softer, the rain tapering off. They stepped outside into the twilight that began to unfurl peacefully, the neighborhood bathed in a serene glow. This wasn't an ending, rather, it was a new beginning. Twin hearts thumping side by side like thunder, they took their first steps back into a world that wouldn't own them, a world waiting to be filled with possibility, laughter, and the simple joys they had almost lost to shadows. As they disappeared down the quiet street, the fleeting fears began to slip away, leaving only an unwavering golden thread of hope. And perhaps that was enough for now, the knowledge that they had survived, together. Now, for everyone who's made it this far, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will haunt and captivate you. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and show your support, it really makes a difference. Flush the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.